Gun control, the death penalty, marijuana, and pornography. These are just some of the many topics California residents will tackle this election day.
With November 8th right around the corner, we'll get you informed before it's time to hit the polls. See It Live starts now.
Campaign finance records filed today reveal contributions toward California's 17 November ballot initiatives have hit a record-breaking $450 million. Good evening, I'm Tommy Brooksbank.
And I'm Brad Stryker. Our reporter Kaylee Heck is live in downtown LA with a supporter of Prop 64 to kick off our coverage. Kaylee?
Thank you. Thanks, Brad and Tommy. I'm live in downtown Los Angeles at Cushmart, a local medical marijuana dispensary. Proposition 64 is possibly one of the most talked about propositions on the November ballot, and that's because it's all about marijuana. If passed, Prop 64 would allow for recreational use of marijuana in the state if you're 21 years of age or older. It would also create a sales and cultivation tax that would go back into the state. Now, California is not alone on Prop 64. A total of 9 states have marijuana-related issues on their ballot this November. That includes Arizona and Florida. Gallup released a poll just yesterday saying that 60% of Americans support use of marijuana. Back in 2000, that number was just 31%. Opposition for Prop 64 includes the LA Area Chamber of Commerce, the California District Attorneys Association, Senator Dianne Feinstein, and the AAA of Southern California. AAA released a statement that reads, quote, "Recent research by the AAA Foundation for Traffic Safety found that fatal crashes involving drivers who recently used marijuana more than doubled in Washington after the state legalized marijuana." The No on 64 campaign has raised about $2 million in contributions, while the Yes on 64 campaign has raised about $18 million. And now I'm joined by Yegish, who is an employee here at Cushmart. And so right now, marijuana in California is only legal for medical purposes. How do you see California and Cushmart changing if Prop 64 is passed?
I believe that once Prop 64 passes, it will decrease crime rates, and it will decrease the amount of drug dealers on the street, which will end prohibition and will create a safe access for anyone that needs to get marijuana. Anyone that's over the age of 21 will be able to buy up to an ounce of marijuana at one time, and this would not affect anyone that is looking to get marijuana for medicinal uses. It will still be the same place that they would still be able to get their medicine, and it wouldn't affect.
Now, California obviously is not the first state to pass anything to legalize marijuana. There are other states that have come before. So do you see, if Prop 64 passes, that this will become a trend in other states?
Absolutely. I believe that if California passes this proposition, many more states will follow in the footsteps and it will become an ongoing trend.
Well, thank you so much for your time. Live in downtown Los Angeles at Cushmart, Kaylee Heck, USC Annenberg Media.
All right, thank you so much, Kaylee. Advocates for Proposition 61 brought their fight against high prescription drug prices to campus today. The group gathered in front of Tommy Trojan to support the proposition. If passed, Prop 61 would require state agencies to buy prescription drugs for the same price as the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. Attendees at the rally say this proposition would give people better access to drugs that they need.
Prop 61 is the first effort at controlling the pharmaceutical prices in this country. So every time we buy a drug, and many of these are life-saving drugs people must have, we are contributing to this, trillion-dollar industry.
But not everyone is in favor. A spokesperson from the Merck pharmaceutical company says, quote, Merck has serious concerns about this poorly written measure because of the negative impact it will have on Californians. We're part of a board and a growing coalition of organizations representing veterans, physicians, health advocacy organizations, businesses, labor taxpayers, civil rights advocates, and others that oppose the drug contracting ballot measure. Another proposition on the ballot is 67, a measure to ban plastic bags in California. Kristen Lago reports if the measure passes, California would become the first state to ban the sale of single-use plastic bags.
You may have noticed an unusual crowd today on Figueroa. Mostly smiles and laughter, sometimes just big bug eyes of surprise. But everybody's had great fun with us today.
Just your typical reaction when an octopus, a reusable bag, and a plastic bag monster roam the streets and take the metro, teaming up for a cause.
Plastic bag we use for maybe 12 minutes is average use, but it's on the planet forever. When the state made an effort to recycle them, we only ever got the recycling rate up to 5%. So the fact is people didn't recycle them, they don't reuse them. People had thousands of them sort of stashed under their room.
And some of that stash ended up here on her costume. Underneath those 400 bags is Meredith McCarthy, the program director at Heal the Bay. She and fellow volunteers distributed hundreds of reusable bags as part of Reusable Bag Day.
All right, come get your free reusable bag.
Their goal? To promote Proposition 67.
This is 400 bags. This is the number of bags that California uses every year. And so we use it as an education piece to talk to people about, sort of remind them about what is the collective look like of all of their sort of single-use consumption.
If Proposition 67 were to pass this November, the measure would ban pharmacies and grocery stores statewide from the use of traditional plastic bags. The measure would also enforce a 10% charge on paper bags sold in stores.
And so we need to move past single-use any kind of material. So this idea of using a bag over and over and over again, a good solid reusable bag is the way to go.
But the American Progressive Bag Alliance says plastic bags actually generate 80% less waste than paper bags. They also argue that charging for paper and reusable bags is a scam. In a statement released by the executive director, Lee Califf, he said the legislation was never about the environment. Our research shows that the vast majority of voters are opposed to the legislation that bans plastic bags and allows grocers to charge and keep fees on other bags. While many local governments already have similar bans in place, it will be up to California voters to decide whether banning plastic bags for good or bagging the ban itself is better for the state. For Annenberg Media, I'm Kristen Lago.
Proposition 67 would allow grocery stores to keep the revenues made from the sale of the paper and heavy plastic bags. But Proposition 65 would redirect that money to the state's Wildlife Conservation Board. Grocers concerned about Prop 65 say they risk losing money if the proposition passes, since the 10-cent fee barely covers the cost of ordering the bags themselves.
Prop 62 and 66 are two of the most conflicting propositions on the ballot this election. Prop 62 gets rid of the state's death penalty entirely, but a yes on Prop 66 would keep the death penalty in place and speed up the appeals process for those convicted. So if both pass, which proposition becomes law? Let's break it down. If both Proposition 62 and 66 pass this election season, things get tricky for lawmakers. The state has to determine which statute becomes law, as both directly contradict each other. To solve this, the measure with the most yes votes will supersede the other if both propositions pass. So if voters want one of the propositions to pass, it's probably a good idea to vote the other measure down. Voting yes on both could stop the proposition you find more important from passing. Now, the death penalty is a hot-button issue in California. Proposition 34 was on the 2012 election ballot and would have abolished capital punishment, but it was voted down by a narrow margin. The latest open field poll found that 48% of Californians currently support Proposition 62. Next on the ballot is Proposition 63, which would regulate the sale of large-capacity ammunition magazines and require certain people to pass a background check for ammunition purchases. Opponents of the proposition say trying to keep large-capacity magazines out of the hands of gun owners won't be enough.
The ability to change a magazine for someone who practices to do so literally takes a matter of 1 or 2 seconds. That's not going to give anybody an opportunity to do anything unless they had a firearm of their own, in which case having a magazine that held more than 10 rounds might be a useful thing to have for the good guys.
To hear more from supporters on Prop 63, check out Annenberg Media's political show, The Current, right after See It Live, on Facebook Live and uscannenbergmedia.com.
Though California is home to many different languages and cultures, the state's public schools are required to teach non-English speakers in English-only programs. This could change with the help of Proposition 58. It would allow schools to implement dual language immersion programs to help non-native speakers. We talked to one USC professor about what this measure could do for students across the state.
We also know that bilingualism is just good for people. We know that it can not only help professionally, but also it has cognitive benefits. And so, many parts of the world, many students learn multiple languages. That's just normal life. And so to start to introduce that here in the US and start to understand what some of those cognitive benefits are in terms.
Opponents of Proposition 58 include the Libertarian Party of California. A spokesperson said, quote, "Our general feeling is that any time education is mandated by the state of California, it ends up being misconstrued from what the voters initially intended when they voted for it. Our feeling is that mandating bilingual education, will cause problems within the school system where we need to be focusing on reading, writing, and arithmetic." The most affected by Proposition 58 and bilingual education are children. We talked with two students at USC who have experienced language immersion programs.
Personally, I think any additional language that you can speak would be beneficial for wherever you go, whatever field you are in. I personally am taking Korean just for fun, and I think adding on to my existing Mandarin skill, and then I speak pretty much fluent with English, it definitely helps you see another kind of perspective, because there's some words that aren't directly translatable.
My parents are very particular about me picking up English. My mom actually studied English in college, and she really wanted me to be good at it, because it's if you want to communicate globally, wherever you go, that's the language you're going to use.
Language has the opportunity to open many doors for students, but California voters will be the ones to determine the future of immersion programs for their children.
And as the election nears, some local communities here in LA are trying to inform their community members about the election. Annenberg Media's Iris Lee has the story.
Cheers erupted as candidates made their case on the big screen in the crowded main hall.
We do a lot of community events, and we bring the community together, and you see the great turnout today.
The historic Holman United Methodist Church on West Adams has been a pillar of the community for more than 70 years. Residents gathered last night to watch the debate and discuss important issues that would affect this community.
Certainly some of the ballot initiatives represent issues that are important to South LA, and I would point out two categories. One, Proposition HHH, which deals with homelessness, and there are a couple of propositions that deal with criminal justice reform.
After the debate, attendees had a chance to ask more questions about various ballot measures and engage their local political leaders.
I believe that this event is important because it's important for residents across the spectrum to come together in community and engage and learn about critical issues facing our community.
The church will be providing transportation to the polls on November 8th.
And I'm joined with Iris Lee and Intizar Siraj this evening to talk more about the community's effort to educate people on California's propositions. Thank you guys for joining me tonight.
Thank you for having us.
So tell me about the event. What was it like going down to South LA?
I think they expected about 400 people at the church to view the debates, but instead they had about 500 people, so it was pretty crowded. Crowds were very enthusiastic, and after the debates, they talked about the ballot measures.
Okay, and how was the reaction during the debate? Were people kind of yelling for their supporters, or was it more kind of a reserved? Was there a lot of discussion going on?
Yeah, I would say the crowd was really electric and really energetic, and it was definitely clearly a Democratic party going on. They booed a lot, or were just asking questions after Trump said something like, oh, how or why are you going to do this? And, of course, cheering for Hillary and clapping a lot. Yeah.
Okay, so it seemed like the majority of the community had the same political affiliation, you'd say?
Yes.
Okay. So I know that they had the debate watch, but there was also talk of propositions after. How was that? Were most of the community people there, did they know about the propositions, or were they really being informed once they got there?
I think they had some awareness of it. They talked about Proposition HHH and Measure M. There were some question and answer sessions about the propositions coming from the community. So mixed.
Was there any propositions that were, specifically more important to the community, it seemed like, or people had more interest in?
I think they were heavily promoting the HHH, which is the bond measure for homelessness.
Okay.
And also some criminal justice ones.
Yeah, 62 and 66 between the death penalty.
Why do you think that is?
From what we heard, I think they were saying that homelessness is something that's really affecting their own community in South LA. So that's why they wanted to focus on that measure. And for criminal justice?
Well, I can't really speak. I'm not from LA, but just as a person of color, I would say it seemed like a large African American community, and I think the death penalty definitely impacts the Black community. So they would be concerned with that.
Definitely. Did it seem like the church played a large role in these people's lives as a community center in the area, would you say?
Yeah, they held a viewing party there before. This wasn't their first time. They've held a party for the first 2 debates. So I think they are very active. The church is historic. It's been around for 71 years, and it's been crucial to the South LA residents in their civil rights and just political engagement. Right, and it's no secret that voter registration and voting isn't that high in the United States, and I'm sure that there's many people in the church's community that don't vote. Do they talk about that with you guys anymore? How they try to encourage people to vote?
Yeah, their pastor, Kelvin Sauls, told us about how they've been really active in getting each of their congregation members registered to vote, and they're even going to use their shuttles to bring people to the polls.
Definitely. Well, thank you ladies so much for joining me tonight. Brad, back to you.
One proposition on the November ballot is meant to increase workplace safety for a unique industry, but it's getting a lot more pushback than you might initially think. I spoke with current and former porn stars about their position on Proposition 60.
I have your gluten-free vegan cheese pizza piping hot.
I bet it's piping hot. Come here.
Pornography is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Millions watch it, thousands work in it, but almost no one ever talks about it. Until now, thanks to Proposition 60. The measure would require adult film actors to use condoms during film shoots.
It's much needed to protect performers from all of the STDs that run rampant in the industry.
Derek Burtz knows the risk of those STDs all too well. For a short time, he worked as a pornographic actor. But after only a few months in the business, he contracted HIV and 3 other STDs. He says that Prop 60 will help bring safety to the industry.
It's really about workplace safety and holding the industry accountable and bringing workplace safety up to the means that all other industries have to follow.
But some aren't so sure. California Republicans, Democrats, Libertarians, and several major news outlets have all come out voicing concerns about the legislation. Their reasoning? They say that parts of the law are so poorly written that it could actually harm performers more than it helps them.
Many of the performers are concerned that they're going to face a barrage of lawsuits from stalkers, from harassers, from anti-porners, from people who are trying to profiteer and just gain access.
That access has performers worried. Prop 60 allows anyone to sue producers if condoms aren't used in a video, but many performers produce their own work. That means that someone could sue a performer and get access to their personal information, like their legal name and address.
I do get death threats and a lot of internet trolls like other people, but with this prop being passed, it will allow those people to gain access to where I live, and that's a huge concern for me.
Tasha Rain has been an adult film star for about 6 years. She doesn't see a need for condom regulation because of internal safety practices that are already in place.
Good, you ready to test? I'm ready to get tested. Can I see your ID?
Yeah. We have something called the PASS system, and that is what we want to legitimize in a legal way. And that PASS system includes an every 13-day blood test and urine test for every STI and HIV.
Rain says she doesn't just prefer this testing over condoms, she relies on it.
Not only do they break, not only does it hurt and tear, but I am actually allergic to most condoms. And so for me, my job will be taken away from me.
But Burt says that testing wasn't enough. He believes that required condom use would have been the only way to prevent him from contracting HIV.
Nope, no milk.
If Prop 60 was something that was regulated back then, I believe today that I wouldn't have HIV.
Looking back on his experience, Burt says that a new law is a simple price to pay for a safer industry. In Los Angeles, Brad Stryker, Annenberg Media. All right, and I think that probably one of the most interesting parts about putting this story together was really just seeing, how much each side supported their own beliefs. I mean, this story really just covers, it's really just the tip of what the problem is.
Definitely. I mean, I feel like there's so many controversial topics on the ballot this year, and there's so many opinions on each side of the issue. I thought it was particularly interesting that there's 2 death penalty propositions this year, 62 and 66, because they're completely on opposite sides of the issue, and both of them can't pass, so it'll definitely be interesting to see what happens.
Absolutely something to look forward to.
Definitely. Well, thanks for watching See It Live. From everyone at Annenberg Media, I'm Tommy Brooksbank.
And I'm Brad Stryker. You can watch us on the web at uscannenbergmedia.com. Stay tuned for The Current.
Listen to me. I am captain of the track team. And if I'm late,
She doesn't really think she's going to get out of here, does she?
be nice. She's new. Hello, is anyone there? Ugh!
Wow. Even from our standards, you look awful.
Oh, sweetie, what happened? Me? My friend Becky got to talk to this super cute boy.